Hi everyone, I'm going to be going over chapter 14 of B.F. Skinner's About Behavioralism book. This chapter is called Summing Up, and it talks about 20 different statements that Skinner doesn't necessarily believe. So I'm going to go over what the statements said. I'm not saying that, again, B.F. Skinner agrees with them, but these are the statements that he thinks are not true. So statement 1 says that methodological and logical positivism ignores consciousness. So stimulation that happens in the body is important, and when you're conscious, you have control over your internal and external body. But when you're unconscious, you do not have control over either one. Statement 2 states that your behavior and your traits are due to 20% of your environment and 80% of your genetics. And my question to you guys is, do you agree or disagree with that? And why? If you think it's more than just genetics and environment, what else do you think really plays a factor in our traits and in our environment? And our behavior? And do you really think it's that 80-20 split? So statement 3 states that eliciting stimuli was the first to be developed and formulated because it's very clear. It also states that stimuli does not elicit operant responses. It simply modifies the probability that those responses will happen. So, statement 4 states, humans engage and disengage from the world. We review contingencies of reinforcement in our world to create plans and rules to follow. But we don't have direct contact with them. We don't have direct contact to the contingencies. And I don't necessarily agree with that either. I think that, we use our reinforcement, the contingencies of our reinforcement, to develop these things, but I don't think we do it so that we aren't exposed directly to the contingencies. I don't know. I just think that's not. I agree with Skinner. Some of these I'm a little iffy on, just from my understanding of them. But that one, I don't really agree with. So statement 5 states the voluntary theory moved from the purpose which displayed genetic endowment from antecedent designs to subsequent selection by contingencies of reinforcement. So basically, we act based on reinforcement, and not just the reinforcement, the way that our body feels with that reinforcement. And that is all called the felt purpose. So statement 6 statement 6 is about natural selection. So natural selection explores or explains why everything on Earth is here, like why it's here, how it got here, that kind of thing. Natural selection does not appeal to the creative mind. Contingencies of reinforcement might explain the solution to math or a work of art without appealing to a different creative trait. Contingencies of reinforcement might also explain why a person who classifies as a genius has more of a creative energy than others. And again, I don't really agree with that one. I believe in natural selection and contingencies of reinforcement, but I don't agree that that may explain why a genius has more of a creative energy than I do or anyone else. I don't think it really works that way. Statement 7 states that humans identify as one and only one. I did underline this in the book. It says self-knowledge and self-management are of social origin, and the selves known and managed are the products of both contingencies of survival and contingencies of reinforcement. So our knowledge and our self-management are based upon the contingencies of survival, so natural selection really, and the contingencies of reinforcement. So we're being reinforced just, by staying alive and so on and so forth, is what statement 7 is saying. Section 8 is saying that behavioral analysts are superficial and don't go deep into the mind. I think that one's very kind of cut and dry, not really true. In a way, I do agree with Skinner that this isn't true. We're not superficial. I don't think we go as deep into the mind aspect as I may have originally thought, but we are not superficial, and we definitely go deeper into things and find a reason for it. So section 9 states that understanding and knowledge is put to use when action is taken. So you don't really prove or show that you understand or have knowledge on something if you don't put it to use. So you can say, yeah, I can read Spanish or understand Spanish, but until you actually put it to use and take action on it, do you really understand it, or can you really read it? I don't know. So section 10, or statement 10 I should say, states that an English behavioralist says that they only work with humans for experiments, and Skinner talks about how using animals can help determine what is only human. So we're going to find out kind of what happens to the pigeons or the rats that were being experimented on. And when that's implemented into humans, we're going to be able to see that difference within species, which I think is really cool. I never really looked at it that way, but reading that was definitely very interesting for me. And we do experiment with humans, but when we're in the laboratory, it's a controlled experiment anyway. It's different. I'll talk more about that one in a different statement as well. So statement 11 is saying, regardless who is studied in the laboratory, it is still different from a daily life. So I'm going to bring back statement 10. So regardless of who is being studied in the laboratory, it's controlled. If you're trying to implement that in anyone's daily life, it's going to look different than it did in the laboratory, just because you can't always control things in people's daily lives. So statement 12 says, those who don't understand might say behavior science is oversimplified or have an or that it's naive. So if somebody has oversimplified or naive knowledge on the matter, things may seem simpler than they are. when they are explained readily on the spot, you can take a deeper look into things and realize that they're more complicated. But the statement itself is saying that the people that study behavior science oversimplify things and are naive to what's really happening. So section 13, or statement 13, states that behavioralism, unlike other sciences, have developed at an unusual speed, even though there's so much more to learn, that we've realized so much more information in such a faster period of time than other sciences. Statement 14 talks about how practices used scatteredly for centuries is often not standard practice, even if it works and makes sense. So they're not standardized because even those wrong practices seem to work and make sense. So the practices that were used scatteredly for centuries is not standard practice because they've been studied, and those practices that have been studied and have proven themselves are the ones that are standard. Wrong practices at first might seem to work and make sense, but there's something else going on with them that doesn't make them work or ethical in general. Statement 15 says, behavioralists cannot step out of the analysis and assume it doesn't happen to them. Again, we still have a lot to learn about behavior of others in general. They specifically talk about, logical scientists or mathematicians and scientists in general, that they can't step out of the practice and assume that certain things don't happen to them. I put a question mark next to my notes on this section because I don't really understand what Skinner's trying to say here. I wish I could be more help on that and help you kind of figure it out too, but that one I'm a little confused on here. Statement 16 says that behavior analysts dehumanize men, so it treats men like a machine, that everyone works the same way and you do the same thing over and over and over again, which is the complete opposite of sometimes what we do. One thing I do with one client can work, and I try and implement it again with my next client, and it goes the complete opposite way. Everybody's mind and body works differently, and to say that, they're like a machine, I don't agree. The statement 17 says, every science has been accused of neglecting uniqueness and uniqueness. In behavioralism, exposing someone to unique contingencies of reinforcement, it gives a different kind of knowing and feeling than when someone follows the rules. So the more unique we are, the statement is saying that, every science has been accused of neglecting uniqueness, but in behavior analysis, uniqueness is what we do. We customize, basically, each plan to each person that's the plan is for. So uniqueness is kind of really what we do. We take our knowledge and implement it in different ways and make it work for each person in particular. Statement 18 says, basic research shows under controlled conditions you are most able to control behavior.